I think what we try to do is we try to challenge that idea that narrative that language does not matter. And so we do that in ways like by hosting events like World Languages Day.
I don't have an ASL course at my school or a Latin course, or I don't get to see K-pop groups that often, and a chance to be exposed to new things.
You're listening to Speaking of Language, a podcast recorded at the Language Resource Center at Cornell University. Each week, we explore a topic related to language pedagogy and second language acquisition. This week, on Speaking of Language,
we revisit Cornell's World Languages Day, which took place earlier this month, with participant Anna Marchetti and Cornell student volunteer Sebastian Young.
Welcome to a new episode of Speaking of Language. I'm Angelica Kramer, the director of the Language Resource Center at Cornell University.
And I'm Sam Lupowitz, the LRC's media manager. We are excited to talk about our annual World Languages Day event today with two participants.
Anna Marchetti is a senior in high school in Victor, New York, just under 2 hours northwest of Ithaca. And Sebastian Young is a sophomore here at Cornell and one of our fabulous LRC student assistants.
We can't wait to hear what you thought about World Languages Day.
Welcome to Speaking of Language, Anna and Sebastian.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
So before we talk all things World Languages Day, please tell us a little more about your background with languages and what prompted your love for languages and cultures. Anna, maybe you could start us off.
Yeah, well, when I was little, I always loved the sounds of languages, but I wasn't old enough to take a course in school yet. So I found an app and started learning through it, and I immediately loved how different pieces of language kind of fit together like a puzzle, and seeing how words related to each other. And as I've grown up, I've really appreciated being able to use language to connect with other people.
And what languages are you currently studying, or what languages have you studied?
I'm currently learning French, but I've also learned a little bit of Spanish and Italian. And I tried a lot of different languages, but just a little bit of each language. So I tried Spanish, French, Italian, German, Norwegian, Irish, Hawaiian, Klingon, which is a made-up language
nice.
From Star Trek. Yes. Just so many languages.
That's wonderful.
And Sebastian, what about you?
Awesome. Yeah. So my journey with studying languages began as a young child. I think growing up in a bilingual household definitely has played an important and integral role in my ability to learn languages. But actually, the story goes that I taught myself how to read and write in both Spanish and English one day because my mom said she went to school and the teacher had said something like, "Did you teach your son how to read or how to read in Spanish or how to read in English?" And she said she was surprised because she had never taught me.
Yeah.
And so that was, I would say, my first experience with reading and writing in both Spanish and English. And I think that was further expanded upon when I was enrolled in a bilingual Spanish immersion school from kindergarten through 5th grade, which then I transferred to a strictly English learning school and have been in that education setting since 5th grade. But I think that's kind of where my process with languages began and has been continued. And to further answer the question of what am I studying, what languages I'm studying, which I presume was going to be asked.
Yeah, sure.
Right now I'm learning German, and I took a year of French in high school. But right now as a college student, I am going to minor in Spanish, with the potential of studying abroad in a Spanish-speaking country.
Nice. That's what we like to hear. So we just hosted our 3rd annual World Languages Day here at Cornell a few weeks ago. World Languages Day is a day-long event for middle and high school students that highlights the importance of language learning, cultural awareness, global literacy, and community engagement. Throughout the day, over 150 Cornell volunteers, presenters, performers, and exhibitors help make the day engaging and informative. Our goal with World Languages Day is to celebrate different languages and cultures, which is so very important in times of global unrest. Anna, this was your second time at World Languages Day. How did you first find out about the event, and why did you decide to attend and then come back?
Well, I happened to find it online, and I decided to come because this event offers so many things that you can't learn other places. Like, I learned indigenous languages, ASL, K-pop, and I think it's a great opportunity to be on campus and learn from people who are so knowledgeable about those things. And I love learning other languages and cultures because I love connecting with other people and expanding my horizons.
Great.
Awesome. Sebastian, you were our student keynote speaker at the welcome session of World Languages Day. What were some of the thoughts that you shared with the middle and high schoolers for our listeners?
One of the main takeaways that I sought to instill in the middle and high school students was the importance of how language and culture can be bridged with your family history. And so for me, I have always found a stronger connection to my Mexican heritage as a Spanish speaker, despite being quite far removed from the migration that my family had made in the early 1910s, 1920s to the United States. And so I feel like because I have been quite far removed from that history, we've lost connection with family in Mexico. It has been nice to, and especially where I grew up too, there's a large Mexican community within the San Jose, San Francisco Bay Area, and so within that, and a lot of it had to do with growing up and really with my mother, who instilled in us the importance of tradition, Mexican tradition. Like, for example, with coming up is Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos is a really important family tradition or Mexican tradition. For those of you who've seen the movie Coco, you know that that's kind of what the tradition looks like. And through that experience, I was able to connect with my Mexican culture and heritage. However, I mentioned this to the students that I lack a connection, or as strong as a connection as that I would like, with my German heritage specifically, partly because, and this is hard because my grandmother, who went to high school in Germany for 3 years, and my dad, who lived and worked in Germany, who somewhat speak the language, was not shared with us. And so it was, and that's something that my brother and I are trying, and my family are trying to learn German, because it is foundational to our family heritage and culture. And so I think that was really the main takeaway from the conversation was, well, how can I share with them how important it is for you to learn the language, because it serves as a pathway to understanding your culture and your heritage and even your own family history.
And if I can jump in here, if you don't have a certain language or cultural background other than English, for example, I think being mindful of that is also so very important for English speakers in the United States, because there are so many multilingual and multicultural people around us, right? We interact with people who, way back, everybody is basically an immigrant of some sort, right? Almost everybody. But I think the degrees of separation are larger or smaller for different people. But I think just being mindful that people have different backgrounds, come from different language and cultural backgrounds, and being understanding of that and being able to celebrate that, I think, is super important.
Absolutely.
So, Anna, can you walk us through the day? How does World Languages Day work? So you arrived. What did you do? What did you learn?
So first I got there, I checked in and got kind of a map of different places we'd been going, my schedule, things like that. Um, then there was the opening ceremony. When I went to French class, I really enjoyed being able to speak French with the professor and speak French with
Sure.
other kids and
Yeah.
kind of converse with other people who love learning that language. So that was really cool and special. And then I also got to take ASL, which I've been wanting to learn for a really long time. But it's one of those languages that's really hard to learn by yourself, or especially hard to learn by yourself.
Yeah.
So it's really helpful to be able to practice with other people and learn
Mm-hmm.
how to convey different phrases, how to
Mm-hmm.
use facial expressions, important things like that. And also, I had Latin, which was pretty cool
Hmm.
because we learned how people still use Latin today, and how even though there aren't any more native speakers, it's still cool to see how different languages have come from Latin and also how Latin is used.
Yeah.
And then also, we got to see amazing K pop groups,
Mm.
student led K pop groups, which were amazing. They did an incredible job. I don't think I would have that amount of energy to be able to dance like that. And there were also a lot of cool informational tables about different resources on campus, different clubs and opportunities, different study abroad. And that was really amazing to hear about because I've always wanted to study abroad
Mm-hmm.
and um, kind of see more of what that experience is like.
Sure.
Um,
Great.
yeah.
Yeah, jam-packed program. And as I mentioned earlier, 150 different people from the larger Cornell community who make this event possible. So it's great to see everybody coming together and sharing information. And I think everybody who attends always learns something new.
Sebastian, as a volunteer for this event, why is it important to highlight opportunities around language and culture learning on a university campus? Is there anything you learned at World Languages Day?
I think a lot of it has to do with the narrative that right now, when, places, higher education, world languages programs are being dismantled, and when even in high school, students are often saying, well, I'm only going to take 3 years of the language because that's going to, quote unquote, impress colleges or show them that that's all I need to get into college. It's these kinds of examples and narratives that perpetuate the idea that language does not matter and is not valued. And so I think it's especially important now to share with students, younger students who are thinking of pursuing higher education, about the importance of learning languages because of these narratives that dismantle that idea. And so I think what we try to do is we try to challenge that idea, that or that narrative that language does not matter.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do that in ways like by hosting events like World Languages Day. To answer the question of why I think events like this matter for younger students is because it gives them an opportunity to understand that there are many outlets out there to continue to use language in ways that we don't really think about, especially in a world that views everything as extremely transactional as we do.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to understand that even language will open up doors and opportunities in jobs. Not only that, but they also offer long-term health benefits like decreasing Alzheimer's or dementia by 5 years minimum is what one of the studies found, I think, at the NIH. So I think it's opportunities like this that prove that learning a language is important, and for young children to know this at such a young age is also cool. And the second half of the question, I think something that was gratifying as a volunteer and in seeing the students was, one memory that comes to mind is the K-pop session where one of the high school students or middle school students, I can't remember, she had expressed a lot of the minute that the K-pop group came in, and the minute she walked into the auditorium, there was a big smile and excitement because she was a huge K-pop fan. And so she was talking with the two executive board members of Loco, which was the K-pop group that had come and taught a little bit of a K-pop dance. And so to see her say, oh, well, I've listened to this song or I've listened to that song and I know this move and to see how engaged she was in really making sure, like, it was only like maybe 5-10 seconds of the song, but to see the way she tried to perfect the moves was exciting and really proves that these are the kinds of support systems that are offered in higher education that she might not have access to as of now.
Yeah. Nice. So what would both of you tell your friends about why they should join World Languages Day next year? Anna, you will be graduating, and we hope that you will be joining as a volunteer next year. But if you had to, if you had to tell your peers in high school right now, what would you tell them why they should join?
I'd say because it's an awesome opportunity to be around campus and to interact with other kids, other high schoolers, other kids at Cornell, amazing and knowledgeable staff, about things that, like I said earlier, that you wouldn't be able to learn other places. Like, I don't have an ASL course at my school or a Latin course, or I don't get to see K-pop groups that often, and a chance to be exposed to new things.
Yeah, wonderful. Great. Sebastian, how would you convince other Cornell students to volunteer for this event?
Well, I think there's many ways to do that, but one or two that come to mind are first by having them understand, I think, the value of sharing opportunities with middle and high school students with regards to language learning. That, for example, at conversation hours, and you talk to perhaps the facilitators or even just those attending conversation hours, that we have such an event, and to invite them to maybe potentially teach the language that they're conversing in. For, I believe each session was more or less an hour, and so I think if they come in and or you advertise it in the sense that, like, you have the opportunity to share with others, those who are younger than you, the value and the importance that language has had on you, speaks volume to encouraging students to continue language learning beyond middle and high school when it's quote unquote required. And the second reason, the way that you can encourage Cornell students to volunteer, is by inviting them to look at this in a different light, as if they are the ones, they are also learning. Because when I look at these students and I see, for example, the K-pop student, I think about myself and how fascinated I was when I took that French class in junior year of high school, and how important it was to have that support system that said, go on, learn French, because while it is another Romance language, it provides you a window into the culture in France. I think it would create an opportunity for students to remember that what was that moment for them that sparked their interest in language learning. And it gives that window back into the past, and might in fact reinvigorate that passion for learning languages or re-excite it. So those are just two reasons why I think students should volunteer.
Right. Yeah. And of course it's fun.
Yes.
And you get to spend the day with Sam and I. I mean, that in and of itself is worth it.
So, what are your plans for continuing your own journeys with languages in the future?
I hope to be a French major at Cornell and also study a ton of other languages. Yes! And I really would love to study abroad, especially in France, but there are just so many places in the world I want to see and so many experiences I want to have. So I hope to further my education at Cornell.
Great.
Awesome.
That's what we like to hear.
I have been somewhat attempting to learn German through the online program of Deutsche Welle.
Sehr gut.
And ja.
I know that one too.
Which an opportunity I had no idea about. And also, of course, as I mentioned earlier, I plan on acquiring the Spanish minor here at Cornell. So I've been taking a lot of Spanish courses, or two since I've been here, and those have been awesome. As well as participating last semester, I participated in the French conversation hour to further continue my French learning, and so those are just specifically for those three languages that I've kind of continued the language learning process.
Wonderful. So we could be chatting with the two of you forever, but before we sign off, we'd like to ask each of you to share a word in a language you speak, you love, you are learning, you may want to learn, that doesn't exist in English, but you wish it did. What is that word? Sebastian, you look ready.
Yes, I have been thinking about this question for a while. One of the words that comes to mind is actually one that I learned in my Latin American documentary class with Professor Irina Troconis. And one of the words that we've learned comes from a documentary we talked about in class about what was happening in El Salvador at the time of the El Salvadoran Civil War, and there was a small town in which their town had been decimated due to the military ransacking of their town, and how they, a lot of the mothers were struggling because they had lost their children. And so that word in Spanish is animero, which means someone or one who used to ask for charity for the souls in purgatory. So, yeah. And so the role of the animero is to sort of console those the souls that are in purgatory.
Wow.
So,
Anna, do you have a word?
Mine is a little bit more of a playful word versus a serious word, but my word is yaourte, which is French, and literally translated, it's a little strange because it means to yogurt, as in like the food, but the actual meaning is to make up sounds when you don't know the lyrics to the song you're singing.
Oh.
So if you picture someone whose mouth is full of yogurt and they're trying to like speak, that's kind of where the idea comes from.
That's excellent.
Awesome.
Yeah, I wish I had a word for that in English too. That's great.
Well, maybe you can coin it, Sam.
There you go. That could be my contribution. Well, thank you so much for speaking of language with us today, Anna and Sebastian.
Thank you so much.
yes, had lots of fun.
Great. Tune in next week to hear about the Safal Cornell Kiswahili Prize for African Literature.
Until then,
Auf Wiederhören!
The Language Resource Center is located on the ground floor of Stimson Hall on Cornell's main campus in Ithaca, New York. Check us out on the web at lrc.cornell.edu.
Or follow Cornell LRC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Speaking of Language is produced by Angelica Kramer and Sam Lupowitz.
Recorded by Sam Lupowitz.
Original music by Sam Lupowitz, Dan Gable, and Joe Gibson.
Thanks also to the College of Arts and Sciences at Cornell University.
As a reminder, the ideas and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the College of Arts and Sciences or any other official entity of Cornell University.
We thank our listeners, and do stay tuned for our next episode.